Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today around demystifying low code. My name is Jack Nutkins. I'm the head of the Power Platform department here at Hitachi Solutions Europe, and I'll be chairing the session today. So this panel today brings together the leaders of the cross-government low-code community of practice to share stories, strategies, lessons learned, and that kind of thing from these departments. And bring their departments are sort of sitting at the front of low-code adoption in the UK government today. This session also serves as a bit of a prologue to an event that we're running on September the 9th that we're co-hosting with the Government Transformation magazine, but we will cover that off a little bit later on today. So on our panel today, we have Ozair from the Ministry of Justice, Emma from Defra, and Diane from ONS. But I'm going to let the guys properly introduce themselves. So Diane, we'll come to you first. Can you introduce yourself for our audience today?
Lovely. Thank you, Jack. So I'm Di Washbrook, and I am a delivery manager at the Office for National Statistics, where I've been working with low code, predominantly Microsoft Power Platform for the past 5 years. I'm also one of the co-founders of the CrossGov low code community.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Diane. Ozair, over to you.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Ozair Shan. I'm a senior technical architect in MoJ, specializing in Power Platform. Like Dan, we established the CrossGov community a couple of years ago, or about a year ago. Prior to that, really been looking at Power Platform from 4 or 5 years now. And yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Perfect. Thanks, Ozair. And last but certainly not least, Emma.
Hello, so I'm Emma Shaw. I am the lead service owner for Power Platform at Defra Group, which is core Defra plus 5 of our arm's length bodies. And I've been leading the adoption of Power Platform in Defra Group for 3.5 years now.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Emma. So before we jump into the questions for the panel, I just wanted to mention that Q&A is turned on, the feature for this webinar. But we won't be fielding any questions from the Q&A today. Reason being is that we're trying to stay on the right side of some recent government guidance in this space. So we will capture your questions and we will either respond to you directly or potentially on the main event on September the 9th. And also for the record, of course, this session is also being recorded today. So without further ado, I think it's time we jumped into the questions. So low code. Why now? Low code platforms, I mean, there's been a surge in interest across the UK public sector in recent years. So, Emma, why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, there's the kind of obvious answer, right, which is that the trend of low code adoption is happening across the private sector as well at the moment. So I think Gartner are predicting around 70% of enterprise applications will be built using low code platforms this year, which is up from 25% 2 years ago. So it's massive, that growth and adoption, right? And I think government is kind of now always a little bit slower on the curve generally, but I think with low code, it's just such a huge opportunity for government. We've got a huge gap in digital transformation. Government, we know, has to transform, and it has a huge digital transformation challenge ahead. So that's kind of one of the key areas. There are huge amounts of legacy technology across government and loads of grey IT. And we'll talk a bit more about shadow and grey IT later. But certainly in our department, you know, there's lots of huge complex spreadsheets and access databases that are still being used for business critical functions. So we know that low code can meet some of those capabilities and help bring some of those into a new era where the data's in a better format and we can do more with it and there's less errors and all of that good stuff. So there's also lots of common capabilities that need to be met by technology across different arms of our organisations, across government, which is why the community is so critical, so that we're driving that kind of sharing. And lots of time and money can be saved by standardising using these platforms. Low code kind of gives us that opportunity, I suppose, to solve the same problem over and over. And it also gives us the opportunity in some cases to solve them more quickly, although I don't think speed is always the kind of unique selling point of low code. And it also allows us to make use of existing licenses, obviously, where those exist. So we've talked a bit about Power Platform already. Obviously, there's lots of other low code platforms as well that have a place in this tech space, but certainly with Power Platform, for a lot of government departments that are already using 365, you've got that kind of sweet spot where you've already got your data in the right places and people using the tools. And we've also got the opportunity, I suppose, to automate lots of processes. And I think that's a really key thing that we don't always talk about at the forefront, but both in the legacy space, where we've still got those legacy applications that we're not going to be able to move away from, where we need tactical automation using desktop automation tools like Power Automate Desktop or UiPath, two tools which we're using at Defra. But then also you've got the opportunity with cloud automation as well, and the opportunity to democratize the ability to automate your processes to people in the business, which is a real sweet spot for us at the moment.
Absolutely agree. I think you touched on it very briefly there as well. I do think the speed element is certainly something that we at Hitachi lean on quite a lot in the Power Platform space. And I think even without the generative AI element, which is of course a very important aspect these days, and the Power Platform being the tip of the spear that it is in that neck of the woods, sort of can't be ignored. I do think the that time to value ratio is certainly hit, really improved significantly through the use of these low-code platforms like the Power Platform, as you've mentioned, others as well. And there's a lot of other organizations, AWS, for example, they're getting into this space themselves now. So it's definitely an area of growth. Dan, Jose, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think just sort of echoing what Emma has said there, that the time is definitely right for low code, especially with the challenges around legacy migration, automation, and also I think productivity is the key word. As civil servants, we are being challenged to be more productive, to make better use of our time, and actually low code is a way we can do that. We can automate some of those core processes, some of those activities that are a real drain on our time, especially that admin burden. It is interesting. I think low code we can use in that transformation space to move away from some of those legacy platforms, but also for tasks that we haven't really looked at automating before, and start small in those spaces.
Absolutely agreed.
And also on that, echoing both of what my colleagues have said, some of the largest projects that make the news, backlogs that make the news, low code is appropriate for actually solving these things. So this is a tool set that the civil service can actually quite rapidly, and on these sorts of large scale, very important projects, can apply, and so we can solve these problems. And really, the political will has been shifting to actually us solving these long-term problems. So that is another reason why we're able to use these tools a lot more.
Couldn't agree more. Cheers, guys. I mean, and I guess testament to this surge in adoption of these low-code technologies across UK government. Of course, you guys set up the cross-government low-code community, and earlier this year, the service manual was released alongside the community. For those that don't know, membership of this community is open to all civil servants and contractors who are basically willing to share experience, best practice, and lessons learned in this space. So I guess the question, I think we've maybe touched it to some extent already, but what prompted you guys to set up this community, and I guess what were the gaps you were looking to address? And I think Diane will come to you on this one, if that's all right.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. So as you've just mentioned there, Jack, we launched our service manual page on gov.uk earlier this year, and obviously lots of the cross-government communities have got a page there, and that's certainly increased our visibility, and it's kind of given the impression we're a new community, but actually we're not. We've been running in various guises for about 5 years now, and we've actually formed from the merger of two separate groups. So to give a very short potted history, I set up a group on a Slack channel, so UK Government Digital, back in 2020. So that was the start of the community for myself. The reason why I did that is that I was working at ONS on a legacy migration project, and we chose Microsoft Power Platform as our target architecture. And it was the first time we'd used it, so we were learning everything from the ground up. there wasn't a lot of opportunity for sharing within ONS because we were the only team using Power Platform. And it sort of struck me that we wouldn't be the only people, though, across government who were starting to adopt this technology. So we started quite small and found others that were also adopting Power Platform at that time. And I think things grew quite organically. There wasn't a lot of promotion. People were just interested and starting to kind of connect. Along that journey, got to know about Emma and her work at Defra. Was really interested in the governance model she was putting in there, because I think, you know, Power Platform is a really interesting technology stack. Low code's very interesting generally, but there are risks, and the governance model helps with those risks. But yeah, so in terms of community, we started running lots of sort of virtual sessions because this was during sort of lockdown era, so everything was virtual. And along the way, became aware of the automation group that Ozair had set up. So probably appropriate if I bring in Ozair at this point in time, just to say a little bit about that community before I bring us up to speed.
Oh, good. Thank you. And yes, again, about 5 years ago, as a developer on Power Platform, or doing development work on Power Platform, we were quite isolated. Really, people didn't know each other, didn't know who to turn to, whether or not what we were building was the right approach. And so it was as simple as looking through the list in Power Apps of all the other people who are developing things and starting pull them together in a department-wide group. And then slowly that grew. We started recording meetings. We played around with the format, you know, how the length of the meetings and so forth. And it grew. It became a place where in Bays at the time, people around Power Platform can conglomerate and ask each other questions and solve problems together, which was great. Then, as Diane was mentioning, you know, you become more familiar with the other organizations across government that are doing things. Home Office being an example, they had this sort of cross-government group on Teams and so forth that they were sort of also sort of closing, and it seemed like a massive opportunity. You know, we're doing these presentations and so forth. Let's talk to these people. Became aware of what Diane was doing. Let's talk to her. You know, let's talk to all these people, bring them all together, and then we started talking about let's create a cross-government community. And yeah, we were working on it, and I think Dan would like to,
yeah, lovely. Yeah, just to very quickly then, Jack, bring us up to speed. So we merged the two groups, so automation group and my group, which was cross-gov Power Platform, in 2024. And since then, we've had some like really good support from GDS as well, who helped us set up that service manual page, terms of reference. We now have a board of trustees, which is great. There are now 15 of us, including Emma, and we're covering sort of a kind of a range of different interests in the low code space. And I think crucially as well, our board includes people who do Power Platform as a day job, the kind of IT departments, digital services space, but also some citizen developers as well. So it's kind of quite a democratic leadership. So our community today, we've got coming up to, I think, 600 members across over about 100 organisations. And I think the highlight so far for this year was we had our conference just back last month at the Microsoft Reading conference, and that was our very first in-person event, wasn't it? It was great to get everyone together. So yeah, that's just a bit of a potted history about the community. In terms of why we're here, it is to share lessons learned. It is to promote low code as an enabler for some of those core goals around automation and AI. And also, I think a really sort of unique theme for our community as well is the democratization of IT. It's about bringing in people who traditionally were not involved in the process of building solutions, but now they can be, because obviously low code's got a very low barrier to entry.
No, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's great to see the interest in this technology is growing so rapidly, and as Emma alluded to earlier on, it's only going to grow more from here on out. And you've already touched on this point, I think, very briefly. But low code is pitched at non-technologists, basically. So, Ozair, this is one for you. Has anyone surprised you as a citizen developer or a maker? And how does your community support these individuals?
Yeah, no, definitely. So if I give actually an example of someone, and a lot of this stuff happens pretty organically, where that someone does a presentation, someone hears about it, and then they're suddenly interested. They understand there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a colleague called Tanya at Bays at time during the energy crisis a few years ago, where we were spinning up an entire sort of task force around energy response for it. She worked in the HR team, and she just attended fairly randomly a session we were giving on what possibilities of low code are. And then afterwards, she came and talked to me and asked for a bit more training, and we did it, and we spoke and worked out what's possible. And then she picked it up all herself, a lot more herself, and then designed an onboarding system that rapidly reduced from the onboarding for hundreds of civil servants that would have normally taken months into about a week, which actually sped up the entire response for the task force. And considering the implication of such a project, this is enormous. And so you see individual pieces of brilliance all the time, but more strategically, or more what as a community we can offer, or what our teams also offers, is things like fusion teams. Is where you've got someone who is quite professional, or who's got a lot of experience in doing this, and they sort of buddy up with someone who has an idea, who understands the business process, because that's one of the big advantages of low code. You can really marry up the two, someone who understands the tech and someone in the business process, without all the layers of digital we're normally used to. And what we can then do is quite rapidly build out a solution. So another example of this is Dom in DCIT. Now they were responsible for questions from the Prime Minister's office, and effectively asking all the policy teams for what responses on the questions. This was a time-consuming thing. It was every week, so very repetitive. And the team weren't able to really look at the strategic problem. They were always just fighting fires. Quite quickly, we were able to develop a Power Platform solution where, with Dom's business knowledge and my technical, in about a week, deliver something to live that actually automated this process. And actually, during that period, Dom was able to pick up a lot of knowledge that he was able to then maintain and even further improve the system. And so that then meant that in the IT world, we don't have to maintain this stuff, but also in the business side, they receive something a lot faster that actually meets their requirements a lot better, and have someone in their team who can build other things, which Dom then did, and also upskilled other people in their team. So it's almost like sort of planting a seed, and seeing someone take it and grow. And there's lots of examples like this where these tools, because they're able to be picked up, people are able to become enthusiastic, and actually the reward, the return on investment of their own time, they can see it very quickly. And so it keeps encouraging them, and it gives their management, which is also very important, them the ability to see that their time that the person on the team is spending is going into something useful, then giving them the opportunity. So yeah, there's lots of very encouraging things where people are able to do things that's surprising, and it surprises us, it surprises them, and it surprises their team that we're able to deliver this stuff quickly and robustly.
Perfect, thanks, Jose. Yeah, so I mean, cases in point, I think it's quite clear that adoption is absolutely key to the success of this technology, and I think it's also clear that the community is certainly helping in that regard. And I also, like your fusion development approach. I think again that's generally speaking quite an important aspect of this. It allows us to break down any potential blockers much more quickly. So thanks again, Jose. So on the 9th of September, we're running a workshop with Government Transformation Magazine. This is titled Demystifying Low Code, Managing Risks and Leveraging Opportunities. So speaking of risks, one concern that is typically raised around low-code platforms is shadow IT, and it's been mentioned already. So at a high level, how is it that you give people the freedom to build while balancing those aspects around governance, security, and spend controls? And what direction and guidance are attendees going to receive at the workshop on September 9th? And I think we'll come to Emma for this one.
So I mean, the grey IT, shadow IT debate is one of my favourite myths to bust about low code, and particularly about Power Platform. So I mentioned at the start, I manage Power Platform here in Defra, and we've had our Business Maker program open. So this is people in the business being able to build solutions for themselves for nearly 3 years now. So we've been quite early adopters on that side of things. I think the key point I always try to get across to people when we're having this discussion is that with Power Platform, because it is all within your 365 tenant, you can see exactly what people are doing. You can see who's done what connectors they're using, what data they're plugging into, and all of that kind of good stuff. So I always recommend to people to use the Centre of Excellence Starter Kit, which is a tool set which is managed by Microsoft, and you can use that to get total visibility of what's going on within your Power Platform estate. What's also key is adaptive governance, which we've touched on very briefly, but essentially what this is about applying the right amount of governance depending on the scope and risk of a solution. So here in Defra Group, we have a governance model which allows people to build up to a certain level of solution without very much IT involvement. Then there's a kind of middle level where we check a few more things, and then the top level is IT delivery only. So those ones have full kind of robust support around them. And really it's all about then the change management piece, which I always tell people is the biggest part of adopting these tools. So making sure that people understand what's expected of them as makers and what that kind of long-term journey of using those tools is going to look like, because it's an evergreen platform, it's always changing. You can't just build something and walk away. You do have to manage it for that kind of ongoing journey. The word of warning I always tell people is that there's always an element of trust involved. Unless you're checking every single solution that people are building, which will get in the way of innovation and progress, you're always going to have to trust your makers a little bit and accept that there is a tiny bit of risk as well. I say a tiny bit of risk, I suppose that depends on your governance model, but there has to be an acceptable amount of risk somewhere. And then when it comes to security, I suppose it's the same as many, with Power Platform especially, same as many other parts of 365, how the security works. So we use security groups and different security roles to make sure that people only have the right permissions to do what they're trying to do in the right place. And then we also have data loss prevention policies which control which connectors people can use. So that's decides what data you can push where, basically. So yeah, that's the kind of governance piece. And in terms of what we're planning on doing at the workshop, we're going to be going into detail on how you can run a business maker program in your organization, what a governance model might look like. And what we're hoping is that people will leave the session with some practical tips, essentially, on how they can go away and do this in their organization. And some of the other stuff we're hoping to do, I suppose, as a community is really just share more of what different departments are doing and help others to kind of pick it up without having to start from scratch. Because some of us have already been through that pain at the beginning.
I don't think I would add anything at all to what you said there, Emma. You know, I don't buy the shadow IT argument really for that, as long as you've got those robust processes and tooling and people in place to protect everything. So yeah, could not agree with you more there. So yeah, thanks, Emma. I guess we sort of mentioned it there, actually, lessons learned. And I suspect the three of you probably learned a lot over the years with regards to working with low-code platforms. So if you could give one piece of advice to anyone from another department or organization who's looking to get started, what would that be? And I think we'll come to Diane first for this one.
So I think my single piece of advice would be to think about business value and benefits. I think, as Emma's just kind of alluded to there, the great thing with these sort of tool sets is you can see, you have got that visibility of what people are building, how they're building it, who's building. You know, it's absolutely not shadow IT. I think for me, it's actually the solution to shadow IT. It brings things out of the shadows. But what the tooling might not tell you is why people are building and what value are we trying to achieve. So I would kind of strongly recommend, as part of setting up that governance, think about business value. You know, it doesn't have to be the same benefits for all of your makers, but have a framework for collecting that, for assessing that, so that you can still start to build up the data that shows the value of your service. And within that, I think it's really important to acknowledge you've got ROI, and that's the one that is often kind of the easiest to quantify. So your return on investment, automation is all about time saved, money saved. But I quite like this term as well, ROE, which is return on employee. And I think in the low code space, especially for people starting out, your first build, you might not get that high ROI, because you're going to probably spend, even with low code, there is a learning curve. You might spend more time learning and building your solution than you actually gain back in hours saved through automation. But that first build, your ROE is through the roof, because you go from being a beginner with no skills in this space to actually starting to become a maker. And I think it's important for organizations to kind of quantify and support that and say, well, actually, digital skills, increasing digital confidence, and also just increasing job satisfaction. If you are reducing that admin burden through low code and automation is quite key. So yeah, balance up those people benefits with the more kind of time and money ones, and you'll have a really good framework.
Sound advice, Dan. Jose, how about you?
Sure. So in the civil service, I think, we can be very sort of governance heavy, wanting to do things properly, which is obviously what we have to do. But at the same time, that does stifle innovation. It does sort of put a lot of people, especially, when you're quite junior and you're just, doing what someone tells you to do in a box. And something I've actually noticed is people who come from, say, STEM fields and things like that, they join the civil service and they're quite quickly disheartened because of the inability for us to move forward. They don't have access to the technology to actually fix things, and a lot of these people actually end up leaving. And so this creates actually a bit of a cultural problem within our organizations. And if we can somehow change that, and low code Power Platform, I think, is a great tool to help start tackling this problem. If we can create like a space where people can try things, are able to fail, are able to make mistakes, but within the guardrails that both Diane and Emma were talking about, are safe, then that gives them the opportunity to experiment, to actually put and take an idea and run with it, and that not only empowers them, it also and makes them more excited for their job. It makes them more enthusiastic that they know that if they see a problem within the organization, they can fix it, they can make a difference. And that's what I would ask the people here on this call to really think about, is how can they make that space where their people in their team are able to feel like they can take an idea, and whether or not it succeeds or fails, they can try it, they can tackle it. So that ability to fail but safely is what I think we need to try to encourage.
Again, I couldn't agree more. Thanks, Jose. And last again, certainly not least, Emma.
I really agree with what you just said there, Jose, and I didn't say it on this call, but I think that's one of the reasons our Business Maker program has been so successful here at Defra, because we've got lots of scientists, lots of people who are really keen to get their hands dirty and solve problems themselves, and I think that's part of the reason it's taken off so well here. In terms of lessons learned, I suppose the biggest one for me has just been this importance of managing your low code platform as a product and not as a project. Once you've done your governance model and your security and all of that good stuff and got it out there, you're not done. You've got to have a team managing this for as long as you're using the product in your organization. So it's quite a lot of time and effort that you need to put into both the kind of change management piece and nurturing and building your community of makers, but also staying on top of all of the new features coming in the platform all the time and being able to prioritize all of those effectively. So the change management piece is enormous. And it's one of the things that I talk about when I talk to other organizations about what we've done. I suppose the technology piece is just like a teeny tiny chunk of it, really. The bigger part is getting the people bit right and getting the change management to land right and to people to understand what it's actually for and how it can help them.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You've touched on it. I won't add too much to this, but from our perspective, we've been called in so many times in the past. I've probably lost count now. To retrospectively put the governance into a Power Platform estate after the horse has already bolted. And I'm sure I could share some horror stories, but I won't on this call. But yeah, I mean, once you've worked out the ROI, get that governance in place, and at least you can move forward safely, basically. All right, next question then, and probably the million-dollar question, really: productivity impact. And this is one for you, Emma. How is low code tangibly improving productivity within your organization, Defra?
Well, this year I'm very excited. I was very excited to launch our benefit tracking solution finally. So we have built our own benefit tracking solution for Power Automate initially, but we'll be rolling it out to Power Apps later this year. And essentially what it does is for anybody that's built a flow, which is automating one of their processes in the cloud, we contact them when they've had their flow live for 4 months, and we ask them how much time their flow is saving them, and then we're essentially rolling up that data. So we now know that our business maker program, so we've got data for about half of our flows so far, but it's saving about 10 full-time employees worth of time every year. But we've got some flows, so we've just started using AI Builder as well, which allows you to build AI within the Power Platform. So there's just some pre-built models in there essentially. So the one that I'm going to talk about is actually a sentiment analysis. So it's a sentiment analysis model, and essentially it's doing what 4 full-time people were doing every month. So it's massive, the time saving. So we're starting to round up those benefits now. It's really exciting. I'm really excited to share that with the community and hopefully help other people build similar solutions. But having those real quantifiable benefits has been such a game changer for us this year, and really understanding those time savings. And then we've also got the kind of qualitative benefits on the Power Apps side, but looking to quantify those this year too.
That's really good to hear, Emma. And you've actually touched on it there, because my next question is actually about artificial intelligence. And when it comes to low-code platforms, the Power Platform probably is the most or one of the most accessible entry points into AI, into agentic AI. And you certainly are, Emma. But Diane, I think, or maybe you might come back to this as well, Emma, actually. But are you using artificial intelligence in any of your solutions, Diane, ONS?
We are, yes. So we started using things like Copilot Studio, and we've got an innovation team that will be sort of spearheading a lot of the work in that space. And yeah, it has been interesting, I think, to reflect on. So the other thing that I'm also working on at the moment is establishing a governance model for Power Platform at ONS. We are actually, we've had our professional developer team for quite a while, but we're pushing ahead with our citizen developer program this year, which is really exciting. And I think it's really interesting rolling that out, because traditionally our governance models have been around Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, to think about the impact of sort of AI, and especially agentic AI. So we are using those technologies, and we're seeing some sort of benefits and some interesting use cases. I think it's really interesting, though, to explore that relationship between AI and low code, and seeing low code as an enabler for AI within organizations. And as we know, across government, there's a big push for us to make better use of AI to transform how we work. And I think for me, a lot of the lessons we've learned, they do apply across to the world of AI and agents. And interestingly, one thing I'd be quite keen to look at as well is how we can actually use those tools within our sort of centre of excellence or centre of enablement services for Power Platform, so we can kind of take our own medicine, So I think very much the kind of jobs that myself and Emma do, we are delivering services to our business makers, and we can actually use things like Copilot Studio to enhance those services, and I'm kind of experimenting with that with myself at the moment, which means we can have this kind of very slick automated service with AI at the heart of it as well. So yeah, exciting times.
Certainly is. How about yourself, Jose, in the Ministry of Justice? What's happening over in your neck of the woods with AI?
Yeah, so in MoJ, we do want to push these things forward. We have an AI directorate who are looking across the board at all sorts of technologies, and yeah, Copilot Studio, AI Builder is up there. I mean, even we've got AI Builder enabled, which means that our citizen developers can actually use it. I was looking through a project earlier today where we've got someone who's built a tool where people can ask it questions on learning and development to this AI builder model, and it will then give them the right sort of course to go on and things like that. And they've just built it by themselves. We're going to push it to MoJ as a whole. And, you know, it was one person doing it. And this is the sort of thing that you can do with low code, where a lot of the most complex parts of you developing these is done behind the scenes. And so you're sort of just bringing your business knowledge into that application and building something actually quite quickly. We're looking at Copilot Studio as well, how we can the licensing models, trying to put governance around it. There is one point I do want to make around this, though, that's a bit unrelated. It's actually around automation before AI. I really think that AI is an amazing tool, and, you know, what it can do is progressing so quickly every year. But fundamentally, the data sets underneath have to be really good. And a lot of what's going on in the civil service is that we're manually typing things into Excel. We get an email, we're copying it into Excel. And by building some automation there, it really does lay the foundations for AI, because then you end up with data sets that are actually very consistent, that they're, you know, even if there was a mistake, that mistake is consistent. Whereas, you know, you don't have this randomness of humans, you know, typing. And so, yeah, I would strongly say, make sure you've got AI automation sorted. You've got your like low code, or, you know, your data sets are being, you know, you're not having someone typing them manually before you really look into AI. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think I did a presentation a little while ago on a very similar subject about having your foundations right first before you can, you know, before you should look to sort of adopt AI wholesale. And that's not just from an AI strategy perspective, but a data strategy perspective. I think, you know, a lot of organizations out there these days just, I guess you could say, aren't quite ready for wholesale adoption of AI. But of course, Emma, how about Defra? What's going on over in your neck of the woods?
So we have got AI Builder as well for our business makers. So I already mentioned some of the big benefits that people are getting with that. And I'm really excited to see, as we do more comms about AI Builder this year, what other kind of things people come up with to use that. Although it's going to be interesting, and I think that, I guess the big topic of conversation is around the sort of licensing and consumption side of it, just predicting how much you're going to need and how the costs are going to kind of escalate over time, and making sure you get ROI. I think that's still going to be a bit sticky, figuring out exactly how we work out where the most value is. And the same stands for Copilot Studio. I think just the calculating the value of things ahead of time is going to be the tricky bit. But we are starting to experiment with Copilot Studio. I don't think we'll be adopting it for business makers anytime imminently, but certainly for our IT projects, we are starting to explore it and look at the value it can bring. It's super exciting to have such an excellent product to add to our stack.
Well, they do say from a Microsoft perspective, the Power Platform is the tip of the spear in this space. So, you know, yeah. I think there'll be much more to come as the years progress. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. That's all the main questions I had for the panel today. However, there is one more, a bit of a plug for our workshop on September the 9th. So, Diane, at that workshop, what do you hope the delegates are going to take away from the day, and who do you think should be in the room?
Yeah. So thanks, Jack. So yeah, for our workshop in September, we're really looking to kind of reach outside of our current low-code community. So as you can imagine, a lot of our events, a lot of our communication at the moment is with our members. So these are people who are already aware of Power Platform and other low-code technologies and are probably actively using them. But our thoughts are there are probably a lot of public sector organizations out there that either maybe they're not using Power Platform or low-code yet. Maybe the individuals in those organizations are, but they haven't got the governance and the central teams in place. And I think what we'd really love to do is kind of showcase the low-code approach and give some advice and some tips to those organizations. So it's about kind of sharing that collective knowledge, which, as we said, sharing lessons learned is what our community is all about. And what we'd love to be able to do is to help organisations who are quite new to this to sort of accelerate their low-code journey and just avoid those pitfalls, all of the things. And, you know, a big nod to Emma here, who was one of the first people to introduce a governance model in sort of in the public sector. You know, I've learned a lot from that. And what we're hoping is if we share that knowledge that we're now amassing across government, we can help people avoid pitfalls. But I think also as well, highlighting the opportunities, you know, so we can talk about governance models and risk. We're aware for some organisations, they need to make that case to their senior leaders and say, this is why low code's important. This is why we think it's worth investing in. So what we're hoping people come away with on the 9th is that elevator pitch that says, yes, these are the risks, but they can be mitigated. And this is how you do good governance in this space. But also these are the opportunities. This is what you can hope to gain in terms of productivity and innovation. So that is the plan for the 9th.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jan. I'm looking forward to supporting that event myself. So hopefully this has driven some interest in the day. And if anyone is interested in signing up for the workshop in September, we'll be sending out columns off the back of the session today with the details. So do keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, this will also include details for joining the low code community of practice as well, if you're interested in diving in. So with that, I think we're done, and we're just about on time as well. So I would just like to thank firstly the panel for their time today. And of course the audience for sticking with us this whole time. So thank you very much, guys. We're going to leave it there and enjoy the rest of your day. Okay. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.